The smell of roast turkey filled the air as I walked up the cobblestone path to my in-laws' colonial house in suburban Connecticut. October leaves crunched beneath my feet, and the crisp autumn air bit at my cheeks. My stomach churned, but not from hunger. These family dinners had become a monthly ritual of endurance. "Remember, just smile and nod," Sarah whispered, squeezing my hand as we approached the mahogany front door. My wife knew how these gatherings went. Her family had money, old money, the kind that came with expectations and judgments. Richard, my father-in-law, opened the door wearing his usual navy blazer and that practiced smile that never reached his eyes. "Michael, how's the little startup adventure going?" His voice dripped with condescension as he shook my hand with just enough grip to remind me he still worked out at 62. "It's going well, Richard. We've been making solid progress." I kept my voice steady, though my jaw tightened. The living room buzzed with the usual suspects. Sarah's brother Tom lounged in the leather armchair, scrolling through his phone. He worked at his father's investment firm, a position that had been waiting for him since birth. Sarah's mother, Patricia, emerged from the kitchen wearing pearls that probably cost more than my car. "Michael dear," Patricia said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "Still playing entrepreneur, I see. How quaint." The word playing hit like a slap. 3 years of 18-hour days, maxed-out credit cards, and sleeping on my office couch, and she called it playing. Dinner was served on china that had been in the family for generations. The conversation flowed around topics I couldn't contribute to: the yacht club's regatta, the new country club renovations, vacation plans to the Hamptons. I sat there, cutting my turkey into smaller and smaller pieces, feeling invisible. "So Michael," Richard said, setting down his wine glass with deliberate precision. "Sarah mentioned you're still chasing that tech thing. When are you going to get a real job? Sarah deserves stability, not these pipe dreams." The table fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Sarah's face flushed red. "Dad, please don't." "No, it's fine," I said, though my heart hammered against my ribs. "The company is actually doing really well. We've got some major deals in the pipeline." Tom looked up from his phone for the first time all evening. "Pipeline deals don't pay the mortgage, Mike. Trust me, I work in finance. I see dreamers like you all the time. Most startups fail within the first 2 years. You're already past that deadline." "Tom's right," Patricia chimed in, her voice syrupy with false concern. "You're 34, Michael. Don't you think it's time to be realistic? Sarah could have married anyone. She chose you, and look how you're repaying that faith." The words stung because part of me feared they were right. The nights I'd lain awake wondering if I was delusional, if I should just take a corporate job and forget about changing the world. But I'd built something real, something that mattered. "I appreciate your concern," I managed, my voice barely steady. "But I believe in what we're building. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the biggest rewards." Richard laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Rewards? You've been at this for 3 years, and what do you have to show for it? You're living in a rented apartment, driving a car that should have been retired 5 years ago, and my daughter is working overtime at the hospital to keep you afloat." That last part twisted the knife. Sarah was a pediatric nurse, and she had been pulling extra shifts. Not because she had to, but because she believed in us, in me. The guilt was crushing. "Richard, that's enough," Sarah said, her voice sharp. "Is it though?" Patricia set down her fork with a delicate clink. "Michael, we like you. We do. But you're not 22 anymore. You have responsibilities. Sarah wants children someday. How can you provide for a family when you can't even provide for yourself?" The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white against the dark wood. "My company will succeed. I know it will. Michael," Richard's voice took on the tone he probably used with difficult clients. "I've been in business for 30 years. I can spot a winner and I can spot a loser. You're chasing something that doesn't exist. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start building a real life." Tom snorted. "Dad, remember when he told us about that revolutionary software last Christmas?" I looked it up. There are 50 companies doing the exact same thing. He's not special. The walls of the dining room seemed to close in. The crystal chandelier above cast fractured light across their faces, making them look distorted, almost monstrous in their smugness. "You know what your problem is, Michael?" Richard leaned back in his chair, wine making him more brutal than usual. "You think you're different. You think you're going to be the exception. But you're not. You'll never be successful because you don't understand how the world really works. You don't have what it takes." Those last words echoed in the silence that followed. "You don't have what it takes." The phrase lodged itself in my chest like a physical weight. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "We're leaving." "Sarah, honey, sit down," Patricia said. "We're just trying to help. Someone needs to talk sense into him before he drags you down with him." "No, Mom. You're not helping. You're being cruel." Sarah's voice cracked, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. I stood slowly, my legs feeling unsteady. "Thank you for dinner, Patricia. It was delicious." The politeness was armor, a way to maintain dignity when everything inside me was crumbling. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. "Michael, wait," Richard called as we headed toward the door. "This isn't personal. It's just reality. The sooner you accept it, the better off everyone will be." The cool October air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I took a deep breath, trying to clear the suffocating atmosphere of that dining room from my lungs. Sarah was quiet as we drove home, both of us lost in our own thoughts. The radio played softly, some pop song that felt absurdly cheerful given the evening's events. The streetlights blurred past the windows, and I found myself gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands ached. "I'm sorry," Sarah finally said as we pulled into our apartment complex. "They were horrible tonight. More horrible than usual." "They're not wrong though," I said, staring at the cracked asphalt of our parking lot. "Maybe it is time to be realistic." "Don't you dare," Sarah turned to face me, her eyes fierce. "Don't you dare let them get in your head. I see how hard you work. I see what you're building. They don't understand because they've never had to fight for anything." But their words had already taken root. As we climbed the stairs to our second-floor apartment, I felt the weight of 3 years of struggle settling on my shoulders. The peeling paint on the hallway walls, the broken elevator that never got fixed, the sound of our neighbor's television bleeding through thin walls. Maybe this was all I'd ever have. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every cruel word, every dismissive look. Sarah slept beside me, but I felt utterly alone. Outside our window, the city hummed with the dreams of millions of people, most of whom would never see them come true. "You don't have what it takes." The words followed me into my dreams, where I found myself back in that dining room, facing their judgment over and over again, forever trying to prove something I was beginning to fear might not be true. Monday morning arrived with the gray promise of an early winter. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the WeWork space where I rented a small office, engine off, watching my breath fog the windows. The building looked different somehow, less like a place where dreams were built and more like an expensive tomb for failed ambitions. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, my business partner and best friend since college. "Coffee? You look like hell." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the lobby, I could see him waiting by the communal coffee station. His sandy hair disheveled in that way that made him look perpetually 17 despite being 36. Jake had left a 6-figure job at Google to start this company with me. His faith in our vision had never wavered, which made what I had to tell him even harder. "Rough weekend?" he asked as I approached, handing me a steaming cup of what passed for coffee in this place. "You could say that." I took a sip and grimaced. "We need to talk." Jake's expression shifted from casual concern to something more serious. "Conference room?" Our conference room was optimistically named. It was really just a glass box barely big enough for 4 chairs and a table covered in coffee rings and the ghosts of countless strategy sessions. Through the transparent walls, I could see other entrepreneurs hunched over laptops, all of us grinding away at dreams that felt increasingly fragile. "The Hartman deal fell through," I said without preamble. Jake's face went pale. "What? When?" "I thought we were just waiting on the final signatures. Got the call Friday afternoon. Their board decided to go with a more established company." I made air quotes around the word, tasting the bitterness of it. "Apparently we're too much of a risk. The Hartman Group deal would have been our breakthrough. 8 months of presentations, revisions, and relationship building, all for a contract that would have generated $2 million in revenue over 3 years. It would have validated everything we'd built, proven that our customer relationship management software wasn't just another doomed startup product." "Shit." Jake slumped in his chair, running his hands through his hair. "That was our anchor client. The one that was supposed to make everything else possible. There's more." I couldn't meet his eyes. "Marcus called this morning. His investors are pulling out." Marcus Chin had been our angel investor, a former tech executive who'd believed in our vision enough to write the first check. His network had been our lifeline to other potential investors. Without his backing, we were dead in the water. "How much runway do we have left?" Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. 6 weeks. Maybe 8 if we cut everything to the bone. The silence stretched between us, filled with the ambient noise of the co-working space. Someone was on a video call in the next pod over, their voice artificially enthusiastic as they pitched their own probably doomed venture. We could pivot, Jake said finally. Maybe there's a different market for the technology. What about the healthcare vertical? Or education? I'd been down this road in my head 100 times over the weekend. With what money? We can't afford to rebuild the product for a new market. We can barely afford to keep the lights on. So what are you saying? The question hung in the air like smoke. What was I saying? That my in-laws were right? That 3 years of our lives had been wasted chasing something that was never going to happen? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe we need to face reality. Maybe it's time to cut our losses and move on. Jake stared at me like I just told him I was from Mars. Move on? Michael, we're so close. I can feel it. The product is solid. The market needs what we're building. We just need one break, one client who sees what we see. What if that break never comes? I leaned back in the uncomfortable chair, feeling the weight of every sleepless night, every rejected proposal, every condescending conversation with potential investors. What if we're just deluding ourselves? Is this about Sarah's family? Jake's question was gentle but direct. Because if it is, it's about reality. I cut him off. It's about the fact that I'm 34 years old and I have nothing to show for the last 3 years. Sarah's been carrying us financially while I chase pipe dreams. Maybe it's time I grew up and got a real job. The words felt like poison in my mouth, but they also felt like relief. The relief of surrender, of stopping the fight. Jake was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe we should shut it down. I blinked, surprised. Really? If that's what you want. If you're not all in anymore, then yeah, we should call it quits. This only works if both of us believe in it completely. He stood up, pushing his chair back with more force than necessary. I just hope you can live with wondering what would have happened if we'd held on for 6 more weeks. He left the conference room and I sat there alone, surrounded by the transparent walls that suddenly felt more like a prison than a workspace. Through the windows, I could see the Houston skyline rising in the distance, glass towers reaching toward the sky, monuments to other people's success. My phone buzzed with a notification. LinkedIn was helpfully suggesting job opportunities, based on my profile. Senior account manager at a software company. Implementation specialist at a consulting firm. The kind of stable, soul-crushing positions that would pay the bills and slowly erode whatever remained of my dreams. I opened my laptop and began typing a resignation letter to our remaining clients. The words came easier than I'd expected, professional and apologetic. We regret to inform you that due to unforeseen circumstances, we will be discontinuing our services. Thank you for your trust in our company. The cursor blinked at the end of each sentence, waiting for me to commit to this new reality. But something held me back from hitting send. Instead, I found myself opening the folder containing our original business plan, the document Jake and I had spent weeks perfecting 3 years ago. The executive summary still made my heart race. Revolutionary CRM software that learns from customer interactions to predict behavior and optimize relationship management. Below that, our mission statement: to democratize advanced customer analytics and help businesses of all sizes compete with enterprise-level tools. It wasn't just corporate speak. We'd built something that actually worked, something that made businesses more efficient and profitable. Our beta clients had seen measurable improvements in customer retention and sales conversion. The technology was sound, the market need was real. So why was I ready to give up? My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice light. How are you doing? You were pretty quiet this morning. I'm okay. Just working through some stuff. Michael. Her voice had that tone that meant she could see right through me. Talk to me. What's going on? I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the weekend's humiliation settling over me again. I think your family might be right. About the company. About me. No. Stop right there. They don't know what they're talking about. Don't they though? Sarah, I've been at this for 3 years and we're barely staying afloat. You're working overtime to support us. I'm living off my wife's salary while I play startup founder. That's not sustainable. It's not playing if you're building something real. And you are building something real. Through the conference room walls, I watched Jake packing up his desk. His movements were deliberate, final. Seeing him give up made the reality of failure concrete in a way that statistics and rejected proposals never had. I lost the Hartman deal, I said quietly. Sarah was silent for a moment. I'm sorry. I know how much that meant to you. It meant everything. It was supposed to be our proof of concept, our validation that we could compete. Without it, I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Without it, you find another way. That's what entrepreneurs do, right? They adapt, they pivot, they keep fighting. What if I don't want to fight anymore? The question surprised me as much as it probably surprised her. But it was true. I was tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired of rejection and disappointment and the constant uncertainty. Then you stop, Sarah said simply. But you stop because you choose to, not because my parents made you feel small at a dinner party. Her words hit me like cold water. Is that what this was about? Was I really ready to abandon 3 years of work because Richard and Patricia had made me feel inadequate? I have to go, I said. I'll talk to you tonight. After I hung up, I sat in the conference room for another hour, watching the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the office space. Other entrepreneurs packed up their laptops and headed home to apartments and houses scattered across Houston's sprawling metro area. Some of them would make it. Most wouldn't. The statistics were brutal and unforgiving. By the time I left the office, Jake was gone. His desk was clean, his personal items boxed up and stacked neatly by the door. A yellow sticky note was attached to his monitor. Call me when you decide what you want to be when you grow up. Jay. The drive home took me through downtown Houston, past the gleaming towers of successful companies and the construction sites where new dreams were being built in steel and glass. The traffic was heavy, giving me plenty of time to think about the choice in front of me. Give up and take a safe job or keep fighting with no guarantee of success. Both options felt like failures in their own way. That night, Sarah and I sat on our small balcony overlooking the apartment complex's courtyard. The October air was crisp but not cold, perfect for the sweaters we both wore. Below us, a few neighbors walked their dogs, their lives seemingly simple and uncomplicated. I've been thinking, Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence. Maybe we should have kids. I nearly choked on my beer. Now. Not this second. But soon. Maybe it's time we stopped waiting for the perfect moment and just started living our lives. The suggestion felt both wonderful and terrifying. Children meant responsibility, stability, the end of risky ventures and uncertain income. It meant admitting that my in-laws were right about needing to grow up. It also meant hope for a different kind of future, one built on love instead of ambition. Sarah, I started, but she held up her hand. I'm not saying give up on the company. I'm saying maybe there's more than one way to measure success. Maybe happiness matters more than proving anything to my parents. As she spoke, I realized that somewhere along the way, my dream of building a successful company had become less about the work itself and more about proving I was worthy of her, worthy of their respect. That night, I lay awake again, but this time I wasn't replaying the dinner table humiliation. Instead, I was thinking about what Jake had said, wondering what would have happened if we'd held on for 6 more weeks. The question followed me into an uneasy sleep, where I dreamed not of failure, but of possibilities I wasn't ready to abandon. The call came at 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in early November. I was sitting in my car outside a Starbucks, having just finished what I thought would be my final client meeting. The conversation had gone about as well as expected. Polite expressions of regret, promises to keep in touch, the usual corporate platitudes that translated to good luck with whatever comes next. I'd been preparing for this moment for 2 weeks. The resignation letters were drafted, the office lease termination notice was ready to submit, and I had a phone interview scheduled for Thursday with a mid-sized consulting firm. The position was Director of Digital Strategy, which sounded impressive enough to salvage some dignity from the wreckage of my entrepreneurial dreams. Jake and I hadn't spoken since he'd cleaned out his desk. The silence between us was loaded with everything we couldn't say: disappointment, regret, and the particular kind of grief that comes with watching something you've built slowly die. When my phone rang, I almost didn't answer. The number wasn't in my contacts, and I'd grown tired of screening calls from vendors asking about overdue payments. But something made me swipe to accept. Michael Rivera? Speaking. This is Jennifer Walsh from TechCrunch. I'm working on a story about emerging CRM technologies and your company came up in my research. Do you have a few minutes to talk? My heart skipped. TechCrunch was the holy grail of startup press coverage. Getting featured there could change everything, but I'd never reached out to them. Our company was too small, too unknown. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. We're not really newsworthy at the moment. Jennifer laughed, a warm sound that seemed genuine. Actually, you might be more newsworthy than you think. I've been talking to some people in the industry and your name keeps coming up. Apparently, your customer behavior prediction algorithm is getting attention in some interesting circles. I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of circles? Well, that's what I'd like to discuss. Are you available for a quick conversation? I'm actually in Houston today for another story, and I'd love to meet in person if possible. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Jennifer Walsh in the same Starbucks where I'd been contemplating the end of my company. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes behind black-rimmed glasses and the kind of confidence that came from years of interviewing people much more successful than me. "So," she said, pulling out a digital recorder and setting it between us. "Tell me about the predictive analytics component of your CRM system." I launched into the explanation I'd given hundreds of times before, but something felt different this time. Jennifer wasn't just being polite or going through the motions. She was taking notes, asking follow-up questions, digging deeper into the technical specifications. "The machine learning model is really the heart of it," I explained. "Instead of just tracking customer interactions, we're analyzing patterns to predict future behavior. When will they buy again? What products are they most likely to be interested in? Which customers are at risk of churning? And this is all proprietary technology?" "Completely. We built it from the ground up, specifically for small to medium-sized businesses. Most existing solutions are either too expensive or too complex for companies without dedicated IT departments." Jennifer nodded, making another note. "I have to ask, how did you come up with the algorithm? This isn't exactly standard CRM functionality." The question brought back memories of late nights in our cramped first office, Jake and me arguing over code architecture while surviving on energy drinks and takeout pizza. My background is actually in data science. I worked for a fintech company before starting this, doing fraud detection algorithms. I realized that predicting fraudulent behavior and predicting customer behavior weren't that different conceptually. "Interesting." Jennifer leaned forward slightly. "And you've had success with beta clients?" "Absolutely. We've got case studies showing 20 to 30% improvements in customer retention and 15% increases in upsell revenue. The results have been consistent across different industry verticals." As I spoke, I felt some of the old passion returning. This wasn't just about proving my in-laws wrong anymore. This was about the technology we'd built, the problems we were solving, the genuine value we were creating for our clients. "Michael, I have to tell you something," Jennifer said, pausing the recorder. "The reason I reached out isn't just because I stumbled across your company. Someone specifically mentioned you to me. Someone pretty influential in the tech space." My stomach tightened. "Who?" "David Chin from Pinnacle Ventures." The name hit me like a physical blow. Pinnacle Ventures was one of the most prestigious VC firms in the country. They'd funded companies that went on to IPO, that became household names. Why would they know about us? "I don't understand," I said. "We've never been in contact with Pinnacle." "That's what makes this interesting," Jennifer smiled. "Apparently, David's been watching your company for months. He told me, and I quote, 'There's this little CRM company in Houston that's building something special. Nobody's paying attention yet, but they should be.'" The coffee shop seemed to fade around us. The conversations at other tables became white noise, and all I could focus on was Jennifer's words. "David Chin knew about us. Had been watching us. Did he say anything else?" "He mentioned that your customer behavior prediction accuracy rates are significantly higher than anything else on the market. He seemed particularly impressed by your work with subscription-based businesses." My mind raced. We'd done some consulting work for a few subscription companies, helping them identify customers who were likely to cancel before they actually did. The results had been impressive, but I'd assumed it was too niche to generate broader interest. "Jennifer, can I ask you something? Why are you telling me this? I mean, this doesn't sound like a typical tech journalism story." She turned the recorder back on. "Because I think you're sitting on something bigger than you realize. I've been covering the CRM space for 3 years, and most of the innovation is coming from established players with huge R&D budgets. But here you are, two guys in a co-working space, building predictive capabilities that are apparently making industry veterans take notice." The next hour flew by as Jennifer interviewed me about everything: our founding story, our technology, our challenges, our vision for the future. For the first time in months, I felt like someone understood what we were building. "I'd like to interview Jake too, if that's possible," Jennifer said as we wrapped up. My heart sank. "Actually, Jake and we're in the process of shutting down the company." Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. "Shutting down? Why?" The question forced me to confront how absurd our situation was. We were closing a company that TechCrunch wanted to write about, that prominent VCs were apparently watching. We were giving up just as we might be on the verge of a breakthrough. "Funding issues," I said simply. "We've been bootstrapping for 3 years and we finally hit the wall." "Have you tried raising money? I mean, really tried?" Series of funding? We've pitched to probably 50 investors over the past 2 years. The feedback was always the same. Too early, too risky, not enough traction. Jennifer looked puzzled. That doesn't make sense. If David Chin is interested, other VCs should be too. Unless what? Unless you're not pitching to the right people. The CRM space is seen as crowded, which makes investors conservative. But if you position this as an AI company that happens to work in CRM, that's a completely different story. AI company. The word sent a jolt through me. We'd always described ourselves as a CRM company with predictive features, but Jennifer was right. The predictive algorithm was the real innovation. Everything else was just the delivery mechanism. Jennifer, can I ask you a favor? Shoot. Can you hold off on publishing the story for a week? I need to have some conversations first. She grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. But Michael, don't take too long. If David Chin is already talking about you, other people are going to start noticing soon. You want to be ready when they do. I left the coffee shop with my head spinning. The world had somehow shifted while I was sitting there, rearranging itself into possibilities I hadn't seen before. The company I'd been ready to shut down was apparently building something that industry insiders considered special. But first I had to convince Jake to give us one more shot. I drove straight to Jake's apartment, a converted warehouse loft in the Heights district. He'd always joked that he wanted to live somewhere that looked like a tech startup, and he'd found it. Exposed brick walls, industrial lighting, and a view of downtown Houston's skyline. He answered the door in pajama pants and a t-shirt from our college computer science program, looking like he'd been coding all night. Which, knowing Jake, he probably had. Michael? What are you doing here? We need to talk. Can I come in? Jake hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. The apartment was messier than usual, with empty energy drink cans scattered across his desk and multiple monitors displaying what looked like a personal coding project. If you're here to convince me to keep beating our heads against the wall, save your breath, Jake said, settling into his desk chair. I've moved on. I'm building something new. What if I told you that TechCrunch wants to write a story about our predictive algorithm? Jake's eyes narrowed. I'd say you're delusional and maybe having some kind of breakdown. I told him about Jennifer Walsh, about David Chin, about everything. As I talked, I watched Jake's expression change from skepticism to confusion to something that might have been hope. You're serious? He said when I finished. David Chin from Pinnacle actually said that about us? According to Jennifer, he's been watching us for months. Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring at the code on his screens. Why now? Why are people suddenly interested after 3 years of rejections? Maybe we were ahead of the curve. Maybe the market is finally ready for what we built. Or maybe this is just false hope. Maybe TechCrunch is doing a story about promising startups that failed, and we're the cautionary tale. I could see the conflict in his face, the war between optimism and self-protection. He'd been hurt by the failure as much as I had, maybe more. Jake had always been the true believer, the one who never doubted our vision even when I did. Look, I said, I know I was ready to give up. I know I said some things about facing reality. But what if reality is different than we thought? What if we've been so focused on what wasn't working that we missed what was? Jake spun his chair to face me fully. What are you proposing? Give me 1 more month. Let me reach out to David Chin, let me see if we can pivot the pitch from CRM company to AI company. If nothing comes of it, we shut down officially and we both move on with clear consciences. And if something does come of it? Then we find out what we're really capable of. Jake stood up and walked to the window overlooking downtown. The city sparkled in the late afternoon sun, full of ambition and possibility and dreams being born and dying every day. 1 month, he said without turning around. But I want to be clear about something. If we do this, we do it right. No more second guessing, no more letting your in-laws get in your head. We go all in. Deal. He turned around and extended his hand. As we shook on it, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine excitement about the future. That night, I sat at my laptop crafting an email to David Chin. The message went through 7 drafts before I found the right tone. Confident but not arrogant, excited but professional. Subject: Houston-based AI company seeking partnership opportunities. Mr. Chin, I understand from Jennifer Walsh at TechCrunch that you've been following our work on predictive customer behavior algorithms. I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss how our technology might align with Pinnacle's portfolio strategy. Our machine learning model has demonstrated consistent accuracy rates 25% higher than industry standards, with particular success in subscription and e-commerce verticals. We're currently positioned as a CRM company but believe our core technology has broader applications in the AI space. Would you be open to a brief conversation about potential partnership or investment opportunities? Best regards, Michael Rivera, CEO, Customer Predict AI. I changed our company name in the signature, making the pivot Jennifer had suggested. We weren't a CRM company anymore. We were an AI company. I hovered over the send button for 10 minutes, knowing that clicking it would commit us to another month of uncertainty, another month of hope that might lead to disappointment. Finally, I clicked send. Within 4 hours, I had a response. Michael, glad to hear from you. I've been impressed by your work and would very much like to discuss investment opportunities. Are you available for a call tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern? Also, I should mention that there are several other firms that have expressed interest in your company. Jennifer Walsh mentioned she spoke with you today. I'd recommend moving quickly if you're serious about raising capital. Looking forward to our conversation. David Chen, Managing Partner, Pinnacle Ventures. I read the email 3 times, certain I was hallucinating. Other firms had expressed interest. We needed to move quickly. I called Jake immediately. David Chen wants to talk tomorrow, I said as soon as he answered. And apparently we have competition. Competition for what? For investing in us. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Jake? You there? Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to figure out how we went from shutting down to having multiple VCs interested in us. It's like we're living in some alternate reality. Maybe we are. Maybe the reality we thought we were living in was the alternate one. That night, Sarah and I sat on our balcony again, but the conversation was completely different from the one we'd had just 2 weeks earlier. I don't want to get too excited, I said, though excitement was exactly what I was feeling. This could all be a misunderstanding. Maybe David Chen is just being polite. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Michael, polite people don't schedule calls with struggling entrepreneurs. Polite people send form rejection letters. So you think this is real? I think, she said, taking my hand, that you should call your parents tomorrow and tell them to watch the news. Why would I do that? Because I have a feeling that by this time next month we're going to have something to celebrate. And I want them to see their son succeed. As we sat there in the cool November air, I realized that success might be closer than I'd ever dared to imagine. The question now wasn't whether we could make it, but whether we were ready for what came next. The call with David Chen lasted 3 hours. What was supposed to be a brief introductory conversation turned into the most intense business discussion of my life. Jake joined from his apartment, both of us on speakerphone in my living room, notebooks scattered across the coffee table as we tried to keep up with David's rapid-fire questions about our technology, our market analysis, our growth projections. Your customer churn prediction model, David said, his voice crackling slightly through the phone connection. Walk me through the accuracy rates again. 93% accuracy for customers likely to churn within 30 days, Jake replied, consulting his notes. 87% for 60-day predictions. These numbers are consistent across all our beta clients. And your false positive rate? Less than 4%. Traditional CRM systems typically see false positive rates around 15 to 20%. There was a pause on the other end, the sound of typing. Gentlemen, I'm looking at your technology from a strategic perspective. Yes, CRM is a crowded market. But predictive AI for customer behavior? That's a different story entirely. That's a market that's just beginning to emerge. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. This was the conversation I'd dreamed about for 3 years. The question, David continued, is whether you're thinking big enough. Are you content to be a better CRM system, or do you want to be the company that defines how businesses understand their customers? Jake and I exchanged glances. We want to define the market, I said, surprised by the conviction in my own voice. Good. Because I think you're sitting on technology that could be worth $50 million within 18 months. Maybe more. The number hit me like a physical blow. $50 million. 3 weeks ago, I'd been ready to shut down the company for lack of funds. Now we were talking about valuations that seemed impossibly huge. What would that look like? Jake asked. In terms of partnership? We're talking about a Series A round of $8 million for 30% equity. That values your company at roughly $27 million pre-money. We'd also bring in 2 other firms as co-investors, Techstars Ventures and Innovation Capital. I grabbed Sarah's hand so tightly she winced. $8 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having access to. There's one condition, David added. We'd want you to relocate to Silicon Valley. Palo Alto specifically. We've got office space available, and you'd be closer to the talent and resources you'll need to scale rapidly. When would you need an answer? I managed to ask. Soon. I meant what I said about competition. I know for a fact that at least 2 other firms are looking at your company. TechCrunch's article comes out Monday, and after that, everyone's going to know about you. We'd prefer to close this deal before that happens. After we hung up, Jake and I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Sarah had been listening from the kitchen, and she came over to sit with us, her face a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Did that really just happen? She asked. I think so, I said. But I keep waiting to wake up. Jake was already on his laptop, pulling up real estate listings in Palo Alto. Holy shit, Michael. Look at this. We're talking about moving to the heart of Silicon Valley. This is where Google started. Where Facebook was born. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of phone calls, legal documents, and due diligence requests. David Chin had introduced us to the partners at Techstars and Innovation Capital, and suddenly our calendar was full of video conferences with investors who'd never returned our calls before. But the most satisfying call came on Friday afternoon. Jennifer Walsh from TechCrunch, I said, answering my phone while reviewing term sheets at my kitchen table. Perfect timing. I've got some updates for your story. Michael, I was just calling to let you know the article is going live Monday morning. Front page of the tech section. But from the tone of your voice, I'm guessing you've got news. We just closed a Series A round. $8 million. Shut up. Are you serious? David Chin came through. Pinnacle led the round, with Techstars and Innovation Capital participating. We're officially funded. Jennifer's laugh was pure delight. This is perfect. This is exactly the kind of story that makes people believe in the startup ecosystem again. David and Goliath, except David wins. There's one more thing, I said, grinning despite myself. We're moving to Palo Alto. We're going to scale this thing properly. After I hung up, I looked around our small apartment. The place that had felt like a symbol of failure just weeks ago now felt like the launching pad for something incredible. Every cramped room held memories of late-night strategy sessions, of Sarah working extra shifts to keep us afloat, of dreams that had seemed impossible. Sarah came home from her shift at the hospital to find me sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by legal documents and laptop computers, wearing the biggest smile she'd seen from me in years. So, she said, setting her purse down and walking over to kiss me. Are we rich? We're funded. Which is different from rich, but it's a start. And we're really moving to California? If you want to. I know it's a big change, leaving your job, leaving Texas. Sarah sat down across from me, taking my hands in hers. Michael, I've been ready for an adventure since the day I married you. I just didn't know it would take 3 years to get here. That weekend, we drove to my parents' house in suburban Houston to share the news. My mom cried when I told her about the investment, and my dad, a man of few words, simply nodded and said, I always knew you had it in you. But the conversation I was really looking forward to would have to wait until Sunday. Sunday dinner at the Williams' house was a monthly tradition I'd been dreading for 3 years. This time felt different. This time I had something to prove. Sarah and I arrived fashionably late, after the news had already broken. TechCrunch had published Jennifer's article that morning, and by noon, it was trending on social media. Houston startup lands $8 million Series A after bootstrap success, was being shared across LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Richard answered the door with his usual practiced smile, but I could see something different in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. The kind of look that came from having to reevaluate someone you'd written off. Michael, Sarah. Come in, come in. Quite a day for you, I imagine. The living room was buzzing with more activity than usual. Patricia was on her phone in the corner, talking in animated whispers to someone. Tom was actually reading something on his laptop instead of scrolling mindlessly through social media. Michael, Patricia approached with her usual air kisses, but her tone was different. Warmer. More interested. I saw the article online. Congratulations. $8 million is quite impressive. Thank you, Patricia. It's been an exciting few days. Dinner was a completely different experience from the last time we gathered around that mahogany table. Instead of dismissive questions about my little startup adventure, I found myself fielding genuine inquiries about the technology, the investors, the plans for scaling the company. So this predictive algorithm, Tom said, actually engaging in the conversation for once, how does it work exactly? I mean in layman's terms. I explained the basics of machine learning, customer behavior analysis, and predictive modeling. For the first time since I'd known him, Tom seemed genuinely interested in something I had to say. That's fascinating, he said when I finished. We see so many companies at the firm trying to crack the customer retention problem. Most of them are taking completely wrong approaches. The market is definitely underserved, I agreed. That's part of why the investors were interested. Richard had been quiet through most of the meal, but I could see him processing everything. Finally, as Patricia served dessert, he cleared his throat. Michael, I owe you an apology. The table fell silent. Sarah's fork paused halfway to her mouth. I was wrong about your company. About your prospects. I let my own biases cloud my judgment. Richard's voice was steady, but I could see the effort it took for him to say the words. You proved me wrong and I respect that. Thank you, Richard. That means a lot. What's next for you? I assume you'll be hiring, expanding? Actually, we're relocating to Palo Alto. The investors want us closer to Silicon Valley resources. Patricia's eyes widened. Palo Alto? That's quite a move. Sarah, what about your job at the hospital? Sarah smiled, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I've already given my notice. Pediatric nurses are in demand everywhere, and frankly, I'm excited for the adventure. As the evening wound down, I found myself in the unlikely position of receiving business advice from my father-in-law. He pulled me aside as we were getting ready to leave. Michael, I've been in business long enough to know that raising money is just the beginning. The real work starts now. Don't let success go to your head. I won't. We've got a lot to prove. You've already proven plenty. Now you just have to execute. Richard extended his hand, and for the first time since I'd known him, the handshake felt genuine. I'm proud to have you in the family. The drive home was quiet, both of us processing the evening's events. The October air was crisp, promising winter, but I felt nothing but warmth. How does it feel? Sarah asked as we pulled into our apartment complex. Surreal. 3 weeks ago I was ready to give up. Now we're moving to Silicon Valley with $8 million in funding. No, I mean, how does it feel to prove them wrong? I considered the question as we climbed the stairs to our apartment. The truth was, it felt good. Really good. But it also felt like something more than vindication. It feels like validation, I said finally. Not just that I was right about the company, but that taking risks, chasing dreams, refusing to settle for safe choices, it all meant something. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the journey that had brought us to this moment. The late nights, the rejected pitches, the moments of doubt, the dinner table humiliation that had nearly broken my resolve. All of it had been necessary, had shaped us into the company we'd become. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jake. Saw the LinkedIn post from your father-in-law congratulating us on the funding round. Didn't you say he thought we'd never be successful? I smiled in the darkness and typed back, people change their minds when the facts change. Fair enough. So, ready to conquer Silicon Valley? Ready as I'll ever be. 3 months later, I was standing in our new office in Palo Alto, looking out at the courtyard where Google had started, watching our team of 12 employees work on the next version of our predictive platform. The morning news was playing on the mounted TV, and the anchor was discussing tech industry trends. In startup news, the anchor said, Customer Predict AI, the Houston-based company that relocated to Silicon Valley after raising $8 million in series of funding, announced today that they've signed a partnership deal with Salesforce worth $12 million over 3 years. I smiled, remembering that October evening when my in-laws had told me I'd never be successful. They'd been wrong about a lot of things, but they'd been right about one. The world really doesn't wait for anyone to catch up. The difference was I hadn't been left behind. I'd been building something they couldn't see, creating value in ways they didn't understand, preparing for a future they hadn't imagined. Success, I realized, wasn't about proving other people wrong. It was about proving yourself right. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. How's the new office? She asked. I could hear the smile in her voice. Perfect. How's the new hospital? Perfect too. Michael? Yeah. I'm proud of you. Not because you made money or got investors or proved my family wrong. I'm proud because you never stopped believing in what you were building. I looked around the office again at the team we'd assembled, at the technology we'd created, at the future we were building together. Sarah? Yeah. We're just getting started. Outside the window, the California sun was setting over Silicon Valley, casting long shadows across the courtyard where 1,000 dreams were being born every day. Some would fail. Some would succeed beyond their founders' wildest imagination. But all of them mattered, because all of them represented someone's refusal to accept that they'd never be successful. I'd learned that success wasn't about the destination. It was about the courage to keep moving when everyone else thought you should stop. And I was never stopping again.